Welcome to collaborative learning conducted by Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery Department of Sinhagat Dental College and Hospital. Today's topic of discussion are the short answer questions which were there in MUHS Winter 2016. So pattern of writing a SAQ, it comes for 3 marks. So first part should contain a brief introduction of the topic. Then the second part should have at least 6 to 8 points on the topic along with the diagram if necessary. Part 3, if any extra short note if necessary. First question is, explain with diagram the symptoms and surgical management of the ciliate in the duct of submandibular salivary gland. Definition: Ciliolith is a calcified structure that develops within the ductal systems of major and minor salivary gland. Symptoms: mealtime syndrome. Pain is mainly due to increased pressure in the duct due to obstruction. Tenderness in the region of the hilum or near Wharton's duct. Fever occurs due to secondary infection. There may be tenderness, trismus, or xerostomia. Pus may exudate from duct orifice and the mucosa around the duct is inflamed. Complications are the bacterial infections of the gland will lead to elongation of obstruction of duct, cyangiectasis, that is dilation of gland due to retention of saliva, and formation of mucocele due to retention of mucus. The management part: first comes the anterior portion of the submandibular gland. Anterior calculi are those that lie anterior to the mandibular second molars. A suture is passed within the into floor of the mouth and the duct around the duct, posterior to the stone to prevent its posterior dislodgement. Suture is placed across the duct anterior and posterior to the site of calculus. An incision is made along the line of the duct. The calculus is identified and a longitudinal incision is placed over the duct and the ciliolith is released. Then the posterior portion of submandibular duct, an incision is made in the mucosa opposite to the premolar region. The duct is traced posteriorly, identifying the lingual nerve as it crosses where it is retracted and protected. The duct is incised parallel to long axis of the duct and the calculus is removed. The mucosal tissue are closed with the uninterrupted sutures, leaving the incised duct open. Third part is the intraglandular portion of the submandibular duct. Presence of calculus in the intraglandular portion of the duct affecting the functioning of the gland or infection is an indication for removal of gland. If the stone is small and the gland is asymptomatic and xylographically normal, it can be left in the place and observed for any change in position or function of the parenchyma of the gland. If it is symptomatic with abnormal glandular structure, xylodenectomy is done. Second question. Second question is, enumerate the techniques of alveoloplasty. Explain with diagram the Dean's alveoloplasty technique. So enumeration of the techniques are primary alveoloplasty, Dean's intraseptal primary alveoloplasty, secondary alveoloplasty, maxillary and mandibular tori removal, mylohyoid ridge reduction, genial tubercle reduction, maxillary tuberosity alveoloplasty. The Dean's technique of alveoloplasty is, first of all, a crevicular incision is made along the gingival margin with the epithelial attachment and interdental papilla attached to the respective teeth. An envelope flap is raised as conservatively as possible. It is shown alongside with the diagram as well. Now the teeth are extracted starting from canine to incisors. After extraction of teeth, the interradicular bony septa should be removed with a round rotary drill, which is introduced into the socket to separate the labial and the palatal cortical plates. A V-shaped cortical plate distal and posterior to the canine eminence as close to the alveolus as possible. Thus, the three sides of the labial cortex become free and the labial cortex becomes freely movable. Osteoporosis graft attached only to the mucoperiosteum from which it receives its blood supply. Now, finger pressure is applied to the labial cortical plate, which is collapsed towards the socket. Sutures are placed to stabilize the tissue. Third question. Describe the various radiological signs to ascertain the proximity of impacted mandibular third molar to inferior alveolar nerve. Now, the 7 radiological signs had been suggested by Howe and Poitron in 1960, which are the darkening of roots, deflection of roots, narrowing of roots, dark and bifid apex of roots, interruption of white line of canal, diversion of canal, narrowing of canal. So the darkening of roots, its impeachment of the canal on the tooth results in loss of density of the root, resulting darkening of the root. Then the deflected root, deflection of the root either to buccal or lingual side or the both sides so that the roots mainly completely are surrounded canal. It may be also be deflected to mesial or distal aspect. Narrowing of root. Narrowing of root on crossing the canal implies that the greatest diameter of the root has been involved by the canal. The fourth is dark and bifid roots. Darkened bifid roots appear when the inferior alveolar canal crosses its apex. It is identified by double periodontal membrane shadow of the bifid apex. Then comes the interruption of the white line. Radiologically, the inferior alveolar canal appears as two radiopaque lines. Disappearance of this white line immediately before it reaches the tooth structure is considered to be interrupted. The interruption of the white lines indicates deep grooving of the narrowing of the inferior alveolar canal, indicates the perforation of root. Then there's diversion of inferior alveolar canal. The canal changes its direction when it crosses the mandibular third molar and is considered to be deviated. There, there will be upward displacement of the canal along with the contents during the eruption of third molar. Narrowing of the inferior alveolar canal. Narrowing of the inferior alveolar canal is appreciated when the canal crosses the root of the mandibular third molar. Narrowing of canal occurs due to downward displacement of the upper border of the canal and the lower border towards each other, resulting in an hourglass appearance. The hourglass appearance may indicate partial or complete encirclement. Now, JP Road criteria of assessment. Now, this person gave the criteria for assessment for the radiological signs of this previous questions. So this can be referred to. Next question. Enumerate and write about the various theories of local anesthesia. They are the acetylcholine theory, calcium displacement theory, surface charge or repulsion theory, membrane expansion theory, and the specific receptor theory. The acetylcholine theory. This theory stated that acetylcholine was involved in nerve conduction in addition to its role as a neurotransmitter at the synapses. The second theory, that's the calcium displacement theory, it stated that local anesthetic nerve block was produced by the displacement of calcium from some membrane sites that control permeability to sodium. Evidence that varying the concentration of calcium ions bathing a nerve does not affect the local anesthetic potency has diminished the credibility of this theory. Third is the surface charge or repulsion theory. It is proposed that the local anesthetic acts as a nerve endings of the nerve membrane and changing the electric potential at the membrane surface. Cationic drug molecule aligned at the membrane water interface and because of some of the local anesthetic molecules carried a net positive charge that they made the electrical potential at the membrane surface more positive, thus decreasing the excitability of the nerve by increasing the threshold potential. Then the membrane expansion theory, it stated that local anesthetic molecules diffuse to hydrophobic region of excitable membranes, producing general disturbance of the bulk membrane structures, expanding some critical regions in the membrane, thus preventing an increase in the permeability of the sodium. It results in decreased diameter of sodium channels, which leads to inhibition of both sodium conductance and neural excitation. Then the specific receptor theory. It is the most favored theory today. It proposes that the local anesthetic acts by binding to a specific receptor on the sodium channel. The action of the drug is direct hand, not mediated by some change in the general properties of the cell membrane. Both biochemical and electrophysiological studies have indicated that a specific receptor site for local anesthetic exists in sodium channel, either on its external surface or on the internal exoplasmic surface. On the local local anesthetic has gained access to the receptors, the permeability to sodium ions is decreased and eliminated, and the nerve conduction is interrupted. Now, enumerate the different intraoral lesions, incisions used in oral surgery. They are sulcular full thickness flaps / or full mucoperiosteal flaps, mucogingival flaps or limited mucoperiosteal flaps, and locoregional flaps. So the sulcular full thickness flaps contains triangular with one releasing incision, rectangular with two vertical releasing incisions, trapezoidal with broad based rectangular, and horizontal with any vertical releasing incisions. The mucogingival flaps contain submarginal or semilunar and submarginal scalloped rectangular or leukoschbeen flap. Then is the third locoregional flap. These are the above mentioned flaps: the triangular flap, the envelope flap, the semilunar flap, the trapezoidal flap, and the last one is the leukoschbeen flap. Next question. Explain any one technique for the surgical closure of chronic oroantral fistula. So the most common which is asked in the exams is the Caldwell-Luke procedure. The instruments for those are retractor, nasal septum, periosteal elevator, gouge, nasal trocar, Kerrison forceps, Rounger, antral rasp, antrum curettes. The procedure is as follows. First of all, an incision is given from the apex of canine down to the gingival margin posteriorly till the second molar. The mucoperiosteum is retracted till infraorbital ridge and infraorbital nerves are preserved. Perforate the center of the canine fossa using a small gouge. The hole is enlarged using Kerrison forceps, so the entry of index finger is possible, and to palpate the sinus lining. The pus and the blood is removed using the aspirator. Adrenaline soaked sponge is used to stop the bleeding. Antral walls and the presence of foreign body in the sinus are inspected using nasopharyngoscope. All diseased tissue is removed if the cyst or polyp is present. Inflammatory granulation tissue is removed using curette. Socket is allowed to fill with healthy blood, and a clot formation is allowed. Gingival margins are approximated. A special note here, ideally fistula is treated by removal of fistulous tract followed by closure. If the oroantral fistula is long-standing, exhibiting signs of maxillary sinusitis chronically, then nasal lavage or nasal anastrotomy is done by Caldwell-Luke operation. Next question. Explain in brief the three principles of fracture management. So the principles of fracture management include reduction, immobilization, fixation, and rehabilitation. The three which are explained are reduction, immobilization, and fixation. Reduction. Close reduction refers to reduction of fracture segments to the previous anatomic and function position by manipulation without direct visualization of the fracture. It is often followed by close fixation. Healing of the bone occurs by secondary intention with callus formation. Now, the external reduction devices which are used are Rose disimpaction forceps to disimpact the maxillae and bring its occlusion, then Hayton-Williams forceps in mid-palatal split technique. Walsham's forceps manipulating the nasal fracture. Ash forceps for septal reduction. Open reduction is the surgical intervention for reduction of fracture segments. Healing takes place by primary intention where no callus formation occurs during healing. Then immobilization. It's a period of stable fixation is required for full restoration of functions. Fixation is done by indirect or closed fixation. It contains intermaxillary fixation. It refers to immobilization of maxilla and mandible in maximum intercuspation position, which aid in wiring in a closed position done by means of wires and springs. Example: direct dental wiring, interdental eyelet wiring, continuous or multiple loop wiring, arch bars, cap splints, intermaxillary fixation screws. Next is the craniomandibular fixation, and third is the external pin fixation. Then the bone clamps, Krishna wires, and hollow frames, etc. are used. In direct fixation, there is semi-rigid fixation and rigid fixation. Semi-rigid fixation is done by transosseous wiring or non-compression mini plates. Rigid fixation is done by compression plates, lag screws, and reconstruction plates. Rehabilitation is carried out in and is checked by primary healing or secondary healing. In primary healing, it's seen for gap healing and contact healing, whereas in secondary healing, we check for initial reaction, soft callus formation, hard callus formation, and then the remodeling. The next question is genioplasty. The definition, genioplasty is the surgical technique used to alter the size, morphological position, projection of the chin with concomitant changes in surrounded soft tissue. The techniques of genioplasty are horizontal osteotomy with advancement, horizontal osteotomy with anteroposterior reduction. In this, the mobilized fragment should be reduced to ensure a smooth transition along the inferior border and avoid palpable wings. Next technique is the Tennant technique. Then double sliding horizontal osteotomy. It is done in sometimes with when the chin is so deficient that the double sliding horizontal osteotomy must be used. Then the vertical reduction genioplasty. Approximately 325 millimeters of vertical changes can be obtained. Vertical augmentation genioplasty. It is indicated when the lower facial height is to be increased. It is accomplished by interpositional grafting. The last is the alloplastic augmentation. Next question. Define trigeminal neuralgia. What are the White's and Sweet's criteria for diagnosis of the trigeminal neuralgia? Enumerate the agents used in medical management of neuralgia and various techniques of surgical management of trigeminal neuralgia. So the definition is, trigeminal neuralgia is a sudden, usually unilateral, severe, brief, stabbing, recurrent pain in the distribution of one or more branches of fifth cranial nerve. The Sweet's diagnostic criteria is, it is paroxysmal. Second, may be promoted by light touch to the face. Third, it is confined to trigeminal distribution. It is unilateral, and the clinical sensory examination is normal. Then the medical management of trigeminal neuralgia includes, the drug of choice is carbamazepine 200 mg per day. Then phenytoin sodium 300 mg per day can be given. Baclofen 10 mg per day. Clonazepam 0.5 mg 3 times a day. And amitriptyline or gabapentin 300 mg. The surgical management of it includes peripheral surgery, ganglion procedures, needle placement, radiofrequency thermocoagulation, glycerol injections, balloon compression, radiosurgery, open operations, and microvascular decompressions. Explain the principles of antibiotic therapy for management of oral infections. It's carried out by reduction of inflammation. Then you check for early infection for the first 3 days of symptoms and and whether the patient is immunocompromised. Late infection after 3 days of moderate to severe immunocompromised state. In reduction of inflammation, the agent which is used is topical lignocaine gel, topical mouthwash, chlorhexidine mouthwash, povidone iodine mouthwash. In early infection with the agents which are used are penicillin, clindamycin, and cephalexin. And in late infection, after 3 days, we give clindamycin, metronidazole, ampicillin, cephalosporins of second generation or first generation. Thank you for your kind and patient listening. Here I have discussed the Caldwell-Luke operation, which is performed for chronic maxillary sinusitis, which is because of chronic oroantral fistula. Now, the techniques for chronic maxillary sinusitis closure are Caldwell-Luke operation, FES, and intranasal antrostomy. The technique for surgical closure of chronic oroantral fistula is Ideally, fistula is treated by removal of fistulous tract followed by closure, which is done by palatal rotational advancement flap and Ashley's operation. It was first described by Ashley in 1939, provides adequate mobility and tissue bulk, requires large amount of mobilization. It often kinks following the rotation of flap with to predispose to venous congestion. Now the diagram shows the palatal rotation flap and the operation. Now the Ashley's operation. Local anesthesia is administered. Excision of fistulous tract is done, marking out the proposed palatal flap, raising of palatal mucoperiosteal flap. Maxillary sinus is inspected and cleared of polyp and irrigated with normal saline and betadine. Trimming of mucoperiosteum, rotational advancement of palatal pedicle flap to approximate the buccal margin with interrupted sutures. There's a Kruger's modification for this operation, and the next diagram will show the Ashley's and Kruger modification.